The United States just got hit with the most devastating economic counterpunch in North American trade history. What started as President Trump's warning of a 25% tariff increase, soon doubled to 50%, on Canadian steel and aluminum has now spiraled into an all-out trade war. Canada's response: a direct strike that effectively choked off America's access to 23% of its total steel imports and an incredible 60% of its aluminum supply. To put that in perspective, Canada shipped nearly $24.4 billion worth of these critical materials to the US just last year. And now, that pipeline is drying up fast. What makes this retaliation so devastating is that it strikes at the very heart of the industries Trump vowed to protect. Instead of boosting US manufacturing, the tariffs have created a supply crisis that economists warn could slash US GDP by as much as 8%, while placing nearly $330 billion worth of American exports at risk. Before we continue, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us beat the algorithm and bring you more reports like this one. For decades, American factories relied almost entirely on Canadian steel and aluminum. Roughly 90% of Canada's exports in these sectors flowed south across the border, creating a dependency that Trump's team underestimated. When Ottawa tightened the screws, US companies suddenly faced a nightmare: soaring costs, disappearing suppliers, and cancelled contracts. In 2024 alone, Canada exported more than $7.8 billion in iron and steel to the United States. These were not optional imports, they were the backbone of American manufacturing. Losing them overnight sent shockwaves across industries, from auto plants in Michigan to tech manufacturers in California. And what sparked this escalation? Ironically, a relatively minor issue: Ontario's new electricity tax on 3 US states. The Trump administration seized on it as proof of Canadian unfairness, threatening sweeping tariffs on nearly all Canadian goods. But when Washington pushed, Canada pushed back even harder. The result was a precision strike. Instead of broad tariffs that US businesses might have been able to absorb, Canada targeted specific products and sectors where the disruption would be impossible to ignore. Steel quotas and surcharges forced American companies to compete for shrinking supplies, driving prices sky high. The political fallout was brutal. Trump's tariffs were supposed to show strength and deliver benefits to swing state manufacturers. Instead, they caused visible economic pain. Companies across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Wisconsin went public with their frustration, undermining Trump's core economic message. On Canada's side, the stakes were high too. Steel and aluminum represent just 0.5% of national GDP, but the impact is heavily concentrated in Ontario and Quebec, where these industries account for over 1% of local economies. That gave leaders like Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Prime Minister Mark Carney powerful incentives to escalate. Ford pushed for an aggressive, hardline response, while Carney used his background as a former central banker to craft a more surgical strategy. Don't forget, if you're finding this breakdown useful, hit subscribe so you never miss a true estate report update. The damage to US industry was swift. Manufacturers scrambled for alternatives but quickly discovered the costs. Materials from Asia and Europe were more expensive, often lower in quality, and rarely delivered on time. Auto factories cut shifts. Tech firms delayed product launches. Even construction projects ground to a halt. The supposed push to protect American jobs was now threatening them. And timing couldn't have been worse. US manufacturing was already under pressure from global supply chain breakdowns, labor shortages, and rising input costs. Canada's counterstrike was the knockout blow, leaving many American companies trapped between paying record prices or shutting down operations entirely. Yet despite the chaos, trade between the two countries hasn't stopped altogether. Canadian exports to the US were actually 2.5% higher in March 2025 compared with late 2024, showing that while other sectors remain strong, the steel and aluminum conflict has carved deep scars into the relationship. This trade war highlights a painful truth: North America's supply chains are too deeply integrated to be unraveled with a few strokes of a tariff pen. Decades of cooperation under NAFTA and now the USMCA built industries where Canadian materials aren't just competitors, they're essential. Trying to sever that link only creates chaos. Instead of the promised industrial renaissance, America now faces rising costs, shrinking output, and angry businesses in key battleground states. Canada, too, is absorbing economic pain, but it has managed to inflict disproportionate damage on its much larger neighbor. And as the conflict drags on, one question looms large. Can these decades-long partnerships ever be fully repaired, or has this trade war permanently weakened one of the closest economic relationships in the world? One thing is clear: in modern, interconnected economies, trade wars rarely produce winners. They leave only rising costs, broken supply chains, and uncertainty on both sides of the border. This is True Estate Report. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.